The twin suns of Kepler 438b cast long shadows across the crystalline desert as Dr. Kim Tae-ho wiped sweat from his forehead. Sun above, 3 months. 3 months they had been digging in this forsaken corner of humanity's newest colony world. And finally, they had found something incredible. Professor Kim, you need to see this, called Park Soo-jin from the excavation pit below. Her voice carried that special tone that every archaeologist lived for. The edge of what looked like a perfectly carved stone doorway, her scanner beeping frantically in her hands. "The readings are off the charts," she said, pushing her dark hair back under her hat. "Whatever built this used materials we've never seen before. The molecular structure doesn't match anything in our databases. Strange symbols were carved deep into its surface, symbols that hurt to look at for too long." Weight of those words settled over them both. Humanity had been exploring space for 200 years now. They had found ruins before, ancient cities on dead worlds, but nothing like this. Small dig site had transformed into a bustling camp. The big man looked unhappy about being pulled away from his duties at the main colony. "Nothing's going to go wrong," Tae-ho replied, though he understood Duhane's concerns. Next, her xenobiology equipment loaded onto 3 HFY sleds. The small woman immediately began taking samples of everything in sight. The purple sand, the strange crystalline formations that dotted the landscape, even the air itself. "The ecosystem here is fascinating," she said, sealing another sample container. Instinctively to his sidearm, "No more than earth bacteria," Mira replied, "though I'm detecting some unusual energy readings from the ruins themselves, carved from the same black stone. Their light seemed to be absorbed by the walls, creating an eerie twilight, even with their brightest illumination. Look at the way the passages spiral inward, leading to something at the center." The translation AI they had brought from the colony worked day and night, slowly piecing together fragments of meaning from the alien script. The Eternal Watcher Soo-jin read from her tablet, showing the latest translation. "This to Earth command, before we go any further, and wait 6 months for a reply. By then, corporate mining teams will be here wanting to strip mine the whole site. This is the find of the century. Duhayen?" Its ceiling disappearing into darkness above them. The walls were covered in intricate carvings that seemed to move in the shifting light of their torches. Nearly 3 meters tall, it depicted a humanoid figure with elongated limbs and features that were almost human but not quite. The proportions were wrong in a way that made the eye want to look away. Its face was beautiful and alien, with high cheekbones and large eyes that seemed to stare directly into the soul of anyone who... Where the walls absorbed light, the statue seemed to drink it in, creating a sphere of deeper darkness around itself. "My God," Mira whispered, "it's a perfect preservation. 12,000 years old, and it looks like it was carved yesterday." Soo-jin was already recording everything, her cameras capturing the statue from every angle. The detail work is incredible. And the face, it's so lifelike. Tae-ho walked slowly around. The statue, his scanner picking up strange energy readings. The mineral composition is unlike anything we've ever found. The molecular structure is ... impossible. "What do you mean impossible?" At the base of the statue, more symbols were carved deep into the stone. Made no sense in human languages. "Warning of the sleeper," Soo-jin read. "The price of contact is the price of worlds." "Friendly bunch, whoever they were," Duhayen said, that humanity was not alone in the universe, evidence of a civilization that had reached heights humanity could barely imagine. "We need to study this properly," he said. "Set up the full scanning array, artificial light in the chamber." The statue seemed to watch them, its obsidian eyes reflecting their movements. Mira's energy scanners detected a faint pulse from within the mineral, so weak it was almost background noise. "It's probably just natural radiation from the material," she said, but her voice carried a note of uncertainty. Soo-jin set up her equipment for detailed photography, preparing to document every symbol, every line of the incredible artifact they had discovered. Tomorrow, they would begin the real work of understanding what they had found. None of them noticed that the statue's eyes seemed to track their movements in the darkness, or that the faint energy pulse Mira had detected was growing, stronger with each passing hour. 3 weeks had passed since the discovery of the statue, and the excavation camp had grown into a small research station. The black statue stood at the center of it all, silent and watching. The message from Earth had arrived that morning through the quantum relay, and the news was better than he had dared hope. The door flap opened, and Sujin stepped inside, her face bright with excitement. "Professor, did you see the message from the university? They're calling this the most important archaeological discovery in human history. Pack your bags, Sujin. We're not going home anytime soon." Word of the funding approval spread quickly through the camp. By evening, someone had broken out a bottle of genuine earth whiskey that had been saved for a special occasion. To the greatest discovery of our age, Duhien raised his glass, his usual serious expression replaced by a rare smile. To Professor Kim, the others echoed, and Taeho felt his cheeks warm with more than just the alcohol. The whiskey was strong, stronger than the synthetic alcohol they usually drank on the colony worlds. Taeho felt it burning in his chest as he told stories of his early days as a student. Laughed, refilling her glass. He would spend hours just looking at a pottery fragment. Careful is good in archaeology. "Speaking of careful," Sujin said with a mischievous grin, "remember that old story about the archaeologist who kissed the statue of Venus and brought her to life? That's mythology." Taeho waved his hand dismissively. "Ancient Greek fantasies." "But what if it wasn't? Wake it up." The others laughed, but there was something in Sujin's voice that made Duhien frown. "Don't even joke about that. We still don't know what that thing is made of or why it gives off those energy readings." "Oh, come on," Sujin stood up, swaying slightly. "It's just a statue. A very old, very beautiful statue. Professor Kim. I dare you two go down there and give our ancient friend a kiss. The great Dr. Kim Taeho, afraid of a little statue." "I'm not afraid of anything." Taeho stood up too quickly, and the tent seemed to spin around him. "It's just unprofessional. We're celebrating the biggest discovery in human history, and you're worried about being professional." The others were watching now, amused by the exchange. Even Duhien was trying not to smile. The alcohol had loosened them all up, made them forget for a moment that they were serious scientists working on an alien world. "I'll show you I'm not afraid of some old statue." Professor Mira tried to intervene. "Maybe we should all get some sleep instead." The whiskey had washed away his usual caution, replacing it with a reckless bravado that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. "This is a bad idea," Duhien said, but he was following along with the others as they made their way across the camp toward the complex looked like a mouth in the darkness, waiting to swallow them. Taeho grabbed a portable light and started down the ladder, ignoring the spinning in his head. "Now, I was just joking around. The passages seemed different at night, more threatening somehow. The black walls absorbed their light, creating pools of shadow that seemed to move when he wasn't looking directly at them. Their work lights had been turned off for the night, leaving only the pale glow of emergency beacons to mark the safe paths. Caught up with him, our mysterious ancient friend. Up close, the statue seemed even more imposing than during the day. The obsidian surface reflected their lights in strange ways, creating the illusion that the carved features were moving slightly in the shifting illumination. Beautiful. In a way that makes you uncomfortable. "Last chance to back out," Professor Duhien said quietly. But Taeho was already walking toward the statue. Actions. Instead, he felt a strange compulsion to touch the ancient artifact, to make contact with something that had been crafted by intelligent hands thousands of years before humans had even learned to write. "This is for science," he announced dramatically, and leaned forward to press his lips. For a moment, nothing happened. Obsidian surface spreading like veins of molten metal through the dark material. The cracks grew brighter and more numerous, creating a web of light that covered the entire statue, that pulsed with inner life. The obsidian eyes snapped open. They weren't carved stone anymore, but living eyes that held the swirling light of distant galaxies. They focused on Taeho with an intelligence that was ancient beyond human comprehension. And when the statue spoke, its voice resonated not just through the air, but through his bones and into his very soul. "Foolish child of a young race." Voice was neither male nor female, but something beyond human understanding of gender. "You have awakened me from my vigil. In your ignorance and arrogance, you have doomed your species to the fate that befell 1,000 worlds before yours." Where its feet touched the ground, Duhien had drawn his weapon, but seemed frozen, understanding instinctively that bullets would be useless against this ancient being. "Run," Taeho managed to whisper. The alcohol fog in his brain burned away by pure terror. Everyone run. They didn't need to be told twice. The team fled through the passages as the temple complex began to shake around them. Behind them, the being they had awakened raised its arms, and a pulse of energy shot upward through the stone ceiling toward the stars above as they emerged into the desert night. She asked Te-Ho looked back at the excavation site, where strange lights were now dancing in the depths below. The energy pulse had been a signal, he realized with growing dread. I think, he said quietly, we just made the biggest mistake in human history. 6 months after the awakening of Calathera, the news had spread across all of human space. The revelation that an alien force was coming to destroy humanity in 100 years had shattered the comfortable illusion that humans were alone. In the universe, Earth's global assembly met in emergency session for 3 straight weeks. Colony governors demanded military protection. Corporate boards crashed as stock markets plunged, times to humanity's divine test. But it was the people themselves who surprised everyone. Yunhei-1 stood before the packed auditorium on New Geneva, her voice carrying to millions watching across the net. Once a powerful senator on Earth, she had become the unofficial leader of what the media called the defectors. We have poisoned 17 worlds, she said, her words falling like stones into still water. We have strip-mined star systems and destroyed ecosystems that took millions of years to evolve. Perhaps the Verdani are right. Perhaps we deserve what is coming. Her followers believed humanity should accept its fate as justice for its crimes. They began setting up communities dedicated to living in harmony with nature. Before the assembled fleet commanders, his weathered face hard with determination. The aliens want to judge us, he growled. Let them try. Humanity has never backed down from a fight, and we're not starting now. We have 100 years to prepare. 100 years to build the greatest military force this galaxy has ever seen. The warriors, as they came to be known, threw themselves into weapons, research, and ship construction. Access through Calathera, looking for weaknesses. Massive orbital shipyards began construction. Dr. Nambora offered a third path. The philosopher-scientist had spent her life studying human nature and social evolution. We ended slavery on Earth. We learned to live. Without destroying our planet, we developed laws to protect the weak from the strong. Change is possible, even for an entire species. The Redeemers believed humanity could prove its worth through good works. They began massive humanitarian projects, establishing schools on primitive worlds, laboratory on Kepler 438b, where he remained studying Quelthara and the ancient ruins. The weight of guilt never left him. His single moment of drunken foolishness had condemned his entire species. The Redeemers are trying to patch holes in a dam that's already broken. Sujin looked up from her datapad, where she had been tracking the various human responses. Then what do you suggest? What if we could prove that we've fundamentally changed, not just individuals, but our entire civilization? How would we do that? By doing something no species has ever done before, Te-Ho said, his voice growing stronger as the idea took shape. By voluntarily giving up our power, by undoing our expansion, by proving that we can choose to be better even when no one is forcing us. The idea seemed impossible at first. Humanity had spent 3 centuries spreading across the galaxy, establishing colonies, exploiting resources, building an empire. The thought of reversing all of that progress seemed like madness, but as Te-Ho began to speak publicly about his proposal, something unexpected happened. People listened. We call it the Great Reversal, he announced during a broadcast that reached every human world. A complete transformation of human civilization. Enslaved, we will share our technology instead of hoarding it. We will prove that humanity can evolve beyond its nature. Military commanders accused him of treason, but ordinary people began to respond with something that surprised everyone. Hope.Jin Wuseok had been a mining executive on Tau Ceti Prime, overseeing operations that stripped valuable minerals from the planet's crust. When he heard Te-Ho's speech, something inside him broke. We're killing this world, he told his board of directors during an emergency meeting. The atmosphere is poisoned. The native plants are dying. The local animals have been driven to 3 isolated reservations. The colonial authority approved every operation. Legal doesn't make it right, Wuseok said. We're going to spend our remaining resources trying to heal the damage we've caused. SEORM, a colonial diplomat, commanders warned that dismantling human expansion would leave them defenseless against other threats. Even many ordinary people questioned whether such massive change was possible, but the movement grew. Volunteer fleets began moving between worlds, not to conquer or exploit, but to restore and repair. Human colonies that had been purely extractive began transforming themselves into research stations and wildlife preserves. Kelthara watched it all with growing puzzlement. "Your species confuses me," the ancient being told Teho during one of their regular conversations. "I have observed 17 different races reach the stars. None of them ever attempted what you are trying." "Maybe that's why they failed," Teho replied. "Maybe the test isn't about proving you're perfect. Maybe it's about proving you can change." "The Verdani do not believe in change," Kelthara said. "We believe in order, in consistency, in the natural laws that govern behavior." "But you're changing too," Teho pointed out. "6 months ago, you were certain about humanity's fate. Now you seem less sure." The ancient being was quiet for a long time, its galaxy eyes reflecting the twin suns of Kepler 438b. "Perhaps," it said finally, "but the judges will not be swayed by uncertainty. They deal in absolutes." "Then we'll have to give them absolutes," Teho said. "Absolute proof that humanity has changed." As the first year of the Great Reversal ended, the results were already visible. 12 worlds had begun successful ecosystem restoration. 3 alien species had been granted full independence and technological assistance, something unprecedented, something that would force even the ancient Verdani to reconsider their judgment. They needed a miracle. 6 months after the awakening of Kelthara, the news had spread across all of human space. The revelation that an alien force was coming to destroy humanity in 100 years had shattered the comfortable illusion that humans were alone. In the universe, Earth's global assembly met in emergency session for 3 straight weeks. Colony governors demanded military protection. Corporate boards crashed as stock markets plunged. Religious leaders proclaimed everything from the end times to humanity's divine test. But it was the people themselves who surprised everyone. Dr. Yoon Hae-won stood before the packed auditorium on New Geneva, her voice carrying to millions watching across the net. Once a powerful senator on Earth, she had become the unofficial leader of what the media called the defectors. "We have poisoned 17 worlds," she said, her words falling like stones into still water. "We have enslaved 2 entire species. We have strip-mined star systems and destroyed ecosystems that took millions of years to evolve. Perhaps the Verdani are right. Perhaps we deserve what is coming." Her followers believed humanity should accept its fate as justice for its crimes. They began setting up communities dedicated to living in harmony with nature, trying to spend their final century making peace with the universe. On the military stations orbiting Mars, Admiral Sankite had a very different message. He paced before the assembled fleet commanders, his weathered face hard with determination. "The aliens want to judge us," he growled. "Let them try. Humanity has never backed down from a fight, and we're not starting now. We have 100 years to prepare, 100 years to build the greatest military force this galaxy has ever seen." The warriors, as they came to be known, threw themselves into weapons, research, and ship construction. They studied every piece of Verdani technology they could, accessed through Kelthara, looking for weaknesses. Massive orbital shipyards began construction, churning out warships designed to fight an enemy beyond human understanding. But on the university world of Kepler 4, for to be Dr. Nambora offered a third path. The philosopher-scientist had spent her life studying human nature and social evolution. "We are not the same species we were 1,000 years ago," she argued before the Colonial Ethics Council. "We ended slavery on Earth. We learned to live. Without destroying our planet, we developed laws to protect the weak from the strong. Change is possible even for an entire species." The Redeemers believed humanity could prove its worth through good works. They began massive humanitarian projects, establishing schools on primitive worlds, sharing technology freely with alien species, and working to undo some of the damage human expansion had caused. Dr. Kim Tae-ho watched all of this from his temporary laboratory on Kepler 438b, where he remained studying Kelthara and the ancient ruins. The weight of guilt never left him. His single moment of drunken foolishness had condemned his entire species. "It's not enough," he said to Sujin as they watched the news feeds. "None of it is enough. The defectors want to give up." The warriors want to fight a war they can't win. The redeemers are trying to patch holes in a dam that's already broken. Sujin looked up from her datapad, where she had been tracking the various human responses. Then what do you suggest? You're the one who started this. Taeho was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the alien landscape where Calthera often stood motionless for hours, like a statue once again. What if we could prove that we've fundamentally changed not just individuals, but our entire civilization? How would we do that? By doing something no species has ever done before, Taeho said, his voice growing stronger as the idea took shape. By voluntarily giving up our power, by undoing our expansion, by proving that we can choose to be better even when no one is forcing us. The idea seemed impossible at first. Humanity had spent 3 centuries spreading across the galaxy, establishing colonies, exploiting resources, building an empire. The thought of reversing all of that progress seemed like madness, but as Taeho began to speak publicly about his proposal, something unexpected happened. People listened. We call it the Great Reversal, he announced during a broadcast that reached every human world, a complete transformation of human civilization. We will restore every world we have damaged. We will free every species we have enslaved. We will share our technology instead of hoarding it. We will prove that humanity can evolve beyond its nature. The response was immediate and divided. Corporate leaders called him insane. Military commanders accused him of treason. But ordinary people began to respond with something that surprised everyone. Hope. Jin Woo-seok had been a mining executive on Tau Ceti Prime, overseeing operations that stripped valuable minerals from the planet's crust. When he heard Taeho's speech, something inside him broke. "We're killing this world," he told his board of directors during an emergency meeting. "We've been telling ourselves it's just business, but look at what we've done. The atmosphere is poisoned. The native plants are dying. The local animals have been driven to 3 isolated reservations. The contracts are legal." His board chairman replied coldly. "The colonial authority approved every operation." "Doesn't make it right," Woo-seok said. "I'm shutting down the mining operations. All of them. We're going to spend our remaining resources trying to heal the damage we've caused." Similar scenes played out across human space. Han Yujin, a terraforming engineer, began developing new techniques to restore damaged ecosystems instead of reshaping worlds for human use. Seo Ram, a colonial diplomat, started negotiating reparations with the alien species humanity had wronged. The Great Reversal faced enormous opposition. Several corporate worlds declared independence from Earth rather than participate. Commanders warned that dismantling human expansion would leave them defenseless against other threats. Even many ordinary people questioned whether such massive change was possible. But the movement grew. Volunteer fleets began moving between worlds, not to conquer or exploit, but to restore and repair. Human colonies that had been purely extractive began transforming themselves into research stations and wildlife preserves. Calthara watched it all with growing puzzlement. "Your species confuses me," the ancient being told Taeho during one of their regular conversations. "I have observed 17 different races reach the stars. None of them ever attempted what you are trying." "Maybe that's why they failed," Taeho replied. "Maybe the test isn't about proving you're perfect. Maybe it's about proving you can change." "The Verdani do not believe in change," Calthara said. "We believe in order, in consistency, in the natural laws that govern behavior." Changing to Taeho pointed out, 6 months ago you were certain about humanity's fate. Now you seem less sure." The ancient being was quiet for a long time, its galaxy eyes reflecting the twin suns of Kepler 38b. "Perhaps," it said finally, "but the judges will not be swayed by uncertainty. They deal in absolutes." "Then we'll have to give them absolutes," Taeho said. "Absolute proof that humanity has changed," as the first year of the Great Reversal ended. The results were already visible. 12 worlds had begun successful ecosystem restoration. 3 alien species had been granted full independence and technological assistance. Human population growth had slowed dramatically as people chose smaller families and sustainable living, but it was only the beginning. Taeho knew they needed something unprecedented, something that would force even the ancient Verdani to reconsider their judgment. They needed a miracle. And somehow, against all odds, they were going to have to create one themselves. 3 years into the Great Reversal, the transformation of human civilization had become the greatest undertaking in the species' history. What had started as one man's desperate idea had grown into a movement that touched every corner of human space. Dr. Kim Tae-ho stood on the observation deck of the restoration ship New Hope, watching as automated systems carefully replanted Thelosted's zone on Kepler 186f. The world had been strip-mined for rare metals 20 years earlier, leaving vast scars across its surface. Now, using techniques developed by Han Yujin's team, they were bringing it back to life. Atmospheric composition is returning to pre-mining levels, reported Captain Lee Minho from the bridge. The indigenous plant life is taking hold faster than we projected. It was the 47th world they had successfully restored. 47 planets where humanity had undone its own damage, often at enormous cost. The mining equipment alone that they had dismantled was worth more than some entire colony budgets. But the Great Reversal was about more than just environmental restoration. On the industrial world of Proxima Centauri b, factories that had employed thousands of Centauri workers, the alien species had been brought to the world under employment contracts that were little more than slavery with better paperwork. The last transport is ready for departure, his assistant reported. All 14,000 Centauri workers are being relocated to their homeworld with full compensation packages. Woo-seok nodded, watching the blue-skinned aliens board the ships that would take them home. Many of them had been born on Proxima Centauri b, had never seen their ancestral world. Sir, his assistant continued, the board is demanding to know how we're going to replace the workforce. Without the Centauri, production will drop by 70%. Then production drops, Woo-seok replied. We're not replacing them. We're converting the factories to automated systems and reducing output to sustainable levels. It was the same story across human space. Species that had been enslaved were being freed. The corporate empire that humanity had built was being voluntarily dismantled piece by piece. The resistance was fierce. Corporate militias fought running battles with reversal forces on 3 different worlds. To join the movement began attacking supply convoys. Even within the participating colonies, there were protests and riots, as unemployment skyrocketed and living standards plummeted. But the movement held together. Survival depended on it. SEORM had perhaps the most difficult job of all. As chief negotiator for alien relations, she traveled between the various non-human species that humanity had encountered, trying to undo decades of damage with words and promises. On the aquatic world of Ross 128b, she knelt before the assembled Council of Depths, the ruling body of the Aquari people. The water was uncomfortably cold for a human, but she endured it as a sign of respect. We acknowledge the damage done to your spawning grounds by our mining operations, she said through the translation device. We offer not just compensation, but active assistance in restoration. Our best scientists will work under your direction to heal the coral networks. Your people have poisoned 3 of our sacred reefs. You have driven away the deep singers, whose songs guide our young. Why should we believe your promises now? Because we are not the same people who made those mistakes, Arm replied. We are trying to become something better. We ask not for forgiveness, but for the chance to prove our change is real. The negotiations took months, but eventually agreements were reached. Their world, and in return, they would provide testimony about humanity's efforts to the greater galactic community. Similar scenes played out with the crystalline beings of Wolf 3 species. Some refused to deal with humans at all. Others demanded reparations that would bankrupt entire star systems. But slowly, gradually, a network of alien allies began to emerge. Back on Kepler 438b, Calthera observed these developments with something approaching fascination. Your population has decreased by 38%, the ancient being noted during one of its regular conversations with Tae-ho. Your industrial output has fallen by more than half. Your military strength has been reduced to defensive forces only. By any logical measure, your civilization is weakening itself into irrelevance. Or evolving into something stronger, Tae-ho replied. Physical strength isn't the only kind of power. The Verdani have ruled this galaxy for 50,000 years. Through strength, Calthera said. Order is maintained through superior force. And how's that working out? Tae-ho asked. You're still finding young races that need to be corrected, still having to destroy entire species. Maybe there's a better way." The ancient being was quiet for a long moment. Over the 3 years of their interactions, Tahoe had noticed changes in the rigid certainty of its early pronouncements had given way to something more thoughtful, more questioning. "I have sent reports to the judges," Calthera said finally. "They are perplexed by your species' behavior. This was not anticipated in any of our models, perplexed enough to reconsider." "No," Calthera said firmly. "The judges do not reconsider, but they have extended the timeline for my observations." Sterilization. It was a small victory, but Tahoe would take any delay he could get. Every additional month gave humanity more time to prove itself. The 5th year of the Great Reversal brought unprecedented challenges. A massive solar storm disrupted communications for 3 months, forcing restoration teams to work without central coordination. Corporate rebels seized control of the mining stations around Tau Ceti and had to be retaken by force. A plague outbreak on New Geneva killed thousands and threatened to derail the entire project, but humanity persevered. When the communications came back online, they found that the isolated teams had continued their work without oversight, guided only by their commitment to the cause. The corporate rebellion was defeated, not by military force, but by the refusal of ordinary workers to support it. The plague was contained through cooperation between human and alien medical teams. By the 7th year, the results were undeniable. Over 100 worlds had been restored to pre-human conditions. 6 alien species had been granted full independence and technological partnership. Human birth rates had stabilized at sustainable levels. The military had been converted almost entirely to rescue and restoration operations. Most remarkably, other young species across the galaxy had begun to take notice. The crystalline entities of the Vega system, who had been aggressively expanding their territory. The hive mind collective in the Betelgeuse region started sharing resources instead of consuming everything in their path. "It's unprecedented," Dr. Nambora reported during the yearly assembly on Earth. "At least 12 different species have begun what they're calling reversal protocols, based on our example." The implications were staggering. Humanity's desperate attempt to save itself had sparked a transformation across the galaxy. Young civilizations were choosing cooperation over conquest, sustainability over expansion. But the ultimate test was still coming. "The judges are nearing the halfway point of their journey," Calthara informed Tahoe during their most recent meeting. "They will arrive in 47 years. Their armada now numbers 15,000 ships, enlarged to deal with what they perceive as a galactic infection of weakness." Weakness? Is that what they call it when species choose not to destroy everything they touch? "The Verdani achieved order through strength," Calthara replied. But its voice lacked the certainty of earlier years. "Your way threatens that order." "Maybe the old order needs to be threatened," Tahoe said. "Maybe it's time for something new." As the 8th year of the Great Reversal began, humanity faced its greatest challenge yet. They had proven they could change, but would it be enough to satisfy judges who had spent 50,000 years maintaining order through fear? The answer would determine not just the fate of humanity, but the future of the entire galaxy. 50 years had passed since Dr. Kim Tahoe had kissed an ancient statue in a moment of drunken foolishness. Now, as an old man with silver hair and deep lines around his eyes, he stood on the observation deck of Earth's orbital station watching the sky tear itself apart. The Verdani judge ships emerged from dimensional space like wounds in reality itself. Massive, crystalline vessels the size of moons, their surfaces crackling with energy that made human sensors scream warnings. 15,000 ships arranged in perfect geometric formations, blotting out the stars. Kite, now ancient himself, but still serving as Earth's military commander. The lead ship was larger than the others, a cathedral of crystalline light that pulsed with power beyond human understanding. From its depths, spoke, reality itself seemed to listen, and transmitted to the alien species that had become humanity's allies. It was the most watched event in galactic history, as billions of beings waited to learn not just humanity's fate, but the future of the galaxy itself. Space. Aggressive expansion, environmental destruction, exploitation of lesser species. Tahoe had been chosen to speak for humanity, a decision that still seemed impossible to him. The man whose moment of foolishness had started it all would now argue for his species' survival. carried by quantum transmission to every corner of human space. We have made terrible mistakes. We have caused great harm. But we have also done something that no species in your records has ever attempted. Explain, Morden commanded. We have chosen to change, Tejo said simply. Not because we were forced to, not because we were conquered, but because we recognized that our way was wrong. The evidence was presented systematically. 127 worlds restored to their natural states, often at enormous cost to human civilization, voluntarily reduced by 40% through education and social. 23 different young species had begun their own reversal protocols, inspired by humanity's example. The aggressive expansion that had characterized the current galactic age was slowing as species chose cooperation over conquest. This is unprecedented, admitted Judge Veltar Morden, second-in-command. In 50,000 years of maintaining order, we have never observed such widespread voluntary restraint. It is an anomaly, Morden replied coldly. Kalthara, who had observed humanity for half a century, stepped forward to address the court. The ancient Watcher had changed over the years, its rigid certainty replaced by something more nuanced. This species has accomplished something that challenges our fundamental assumptions about young races, Morden commanded. They have demonstrated that conscious evolution is possible. Not just individuals learning and growing, but an entire civilization stepped forward, now serving as humanity's chief ambassador, tirelessly to restore poisoned reefs, asking for nothing in return. The crystalline beings of Wolf 359 testified that humans had shared life extension technology freely. This is all very touching, Morden said dismissively, but it does not change the fundamental nature of your species. You remain capable of reverting to your old ways the moment circumstances change. Then test us, Tejo said suddenly. Give us a challenge that would tempt any species to abandon its principles. See what we choose. And Tejo could sense vast intelligence considering the proposal. Very well, we offer you this choice. Submit to Verdani rule, become a client species in our empire, and your worlds will be spared. You will live, but you will never again expand beyond your current borders. You will accept our judgment in all matters, or, Tejo asked, though he dreaded the answer, or maintain your independence and face immediate sterilization. Your choice will reveal your true nature. The silence that followed seemed to stretch for eternity. This was the ultimate test. Looked around at the faces watching him, representatives of every human world, allies who had trusted in humanity's change, the ancient judges who had maintained galactic order for millennia. The weight of an entire species' future rested on his next words. We refuse, he said clearly. We will not trade our freedom for safety. We will not accept rule by fear, even to survive. Their transformation had limits. But Tejo wasn't finished. Let us serve as shepherds for emerging species, not as your clients, but as your partners. Let us help young races choose cooperation over conquest, growth over exploitation. Let us prove that order can be maintained through inspiration rather than fear. In 50,000 years, no species has ever refused the offer of client status. All have chosen survival over principle. Judge Veltar spoke up, its voice carrying uncertainty. Hi, Judge, the data supports their claims. 23 species have voluntarily reduced their expansion rates after observing humanity's example. The aggressive competition that has defined this galactic age is measurably decreasing, and this concerns you, Morden asked. Perhaps our methods require ... evaluation. The word hung in space like a revolution. For the first time in 50 millennia, the Verdani judges were questioning their own absolute certainty. Kalthara stepped forward again. Valuable data for future protocols. You wish to remain among them? Morden asked. I wish to learn from them, Kalthara said simply. As they've learned to change, perhaps we too can evolve. The final judgment took 3 days to deliberate, 3 days during which the galaxy held its breath. When High Judge Morden finally spoke, its words would echo through history. Humanity, you have achieved something unprecedented in our experience. You have demonstrated that conscious evolution is possible, that species can choose to become more than their nature dictates. However, this achievement comes with responsibilities. Tejo felt his heart hammering as he waited for the verdict. You will serve as shepherds for emerging species, helping them Choose wisdom over conquest. Your expansion will be limited and monitored. But if you succeed, if you prove that inspiration can maintain order better than fear, Taeho one final time. You have done something remarkable. The Verdani will never be the same. Is that good or bad? Later, as Taeho lay on his deathbed, he could see through his window the ships of the new fleet preparing for departure. Human vessels redesigned not for conquest but for teaching, setting out to guide young species toward wisdom instead of war. Su-Jin, now an old woman herself, sat beside his bed. Any regrets? She asked gently. Humanity had faced the ultimate. They had proven that even the most flawed species could choose to become something better. And in doing so, they had changed the very nature of how civilizations would be judged for all time to come.